The Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
You're listening to the Alldus podcast ServiceNow series. Our guest today is K. Scott Engstrom. K. Scott is the Executive Director of the ServiceNow practice at CAI. Hey, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. I feel like this one has been a long time coming, so let's jump straight in. Okay, Scott, let's start with yourself as we do with all of our guests. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of your journey in technology, where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and how you got to where you are today as the Executive Director at CAI?
Absolutely. I took an interest in computers at a very early age, as far back as 78. My dad had a Tandy Radio Shack, what we called a Trashy 80, and I used to play backgammon on a cassette player, believe it or not, and use online services like The Source and CompuServe. But as a paying endeavor, really started after I graduated college. My first job was at a nonprofit, and my job was to connect Macintoshes to PCs, which in 1987 wasn't quite as easy as it is today. So my job was to be the LAN manager. And that was around the same time, you may know that historically, Time magazine names a person of the year or man of the year. The PC was the man of the year, either that year or the next year. So that was really at the beginning of everybody gets a PC. In 1990, I went to work for a large financial services firm as an automation engineer. It was my first opportunity to use a programming language like C, C++ to write automated robots that would take transactions, repetitive transactions, and process them in a few seconds where it would normally have taken a person a minute. While I was with that company, I got my MBA at NYU and started to broaden my horizons beyond just technology into some of the management aspects of technology. I joined a technology-based outsourcing firm in 1999, and my team built websites, one of which was to process payments for utility companies who couldn't charge a fee, or at least not a different fee, for different payment channels. And we, as a third-party vendor, were able to do that because credit cards cost a percentage of the transaction, whereas a check is typically a flat fee, and ultimately cash should be fee-free. So we built a pretty robust payment engine, that some of which is still in use today, believe it or not. In that same company, when I moved on from the payment processing engine, I got my first experience with ServiceNow as I led the project to replace Trackit with ServiceNow. That was in 2012. In 2017, I left that company and tried to make it as a one-person LLC doing ServiceNow consulting. And it worked okay for a short period, but the ecosystem was clearly built for larger partners that could bring different talents to the table, not just technical talents, but project management talents and testing talents. And so I joined CAI in 2018 because I wanted to be part of that. And nice. As a family-owned and operated company, I really felt the stability was going to be there both for me and for the company long term, and that really has proven to be true. I look around me and see a bunch of 20-year employees at this company, and that makes me feel good.
Thank you so much for that, K. Scott. You've already touched on your journey to CAI and what you enjoy about them, which I know we're going to cover in a lot more detail later. So taking it up a level, for those listening who are not familiar with CAI, tell us all about the company, who you are, what you do, mission of the business, and then we'll talk about your role being heavily involved in the adaptation and growth of the ServiceNow practice.
Yeah, CAI has been a family-owned and operated company for 40 years, over 40 years. We've got over 8,000 associates worldwide with a revenue of over $1 billion. And the ServiceNow practice is a part of that, but it's a relatively small part of that. We do a lot of other types of technical and non-technical services that we consult with our clients about. We've been an elite partner for the last 7 years, and we've been a partner overall since 2012, which it's hard to believe. We're an elite partner in the ecosystem, and we do managed service provider with a domain-separated instance. We also do a lot of consulting and implementation, and we do license resale. So those are the three towers within the ServiceNow partner ecosystem that
Mhm.
we participate in. And then we also do quite a bit of training. In fact, we have the number one rated trainer in the ServiceNow ecosystem right now. Outside of ServiceNow, CAI has actually won some industry type awards around disability inclusion and corporate social responsibility, neurodiversity employment. We actually this year were recently voted again a top place to work in Delaware for 2024. So we're really proud of the things that we do, both in the technology sphere, but also in making every place that we go better than before we got there.
Thanks again for that, Kay Scott. So jumping straight into your role as executive director and trying to visualize the type of work that you're doing, could you give us some insight into the team, how you guys go about working with your customers, and maybe share a recent project that you were particularly proud of, or that would demonstrate that the impact that you're having for CAI's customers and utilizing ServiceNow and its capabilities?
Well, we have a sizable group of clients that we've worked with for a long time. In fact, our very first ServiceNow customer is still a customer of ours. And we also have a very large and growing public sector aspect to our business. And we constantly on the lookout for RFPs that are released by city, county, state government offices. And we respond to those if we think we have the requisite experience or qualifications to respond to them. And a few of those are ServiceNow specific, either because they're already on ServiceNow and they need help with that, or they are getting off of a platform and they need a replacement platform. And so the job just becomes a little bit different depending on those two scenarios. In one case, you're fighting to convince them that ServiceNow is the right platform and that CAI is the right company, but in others, just that CAI is the right company if they've already picked ServiceNow. And we also bring to bear, as I mentioned, I touched on a little bit earlier, we've got a neurodiversity employment program where we bring employment opportunities to people that otherwise might not have had the same opportunities, especially in the technology sphere. We've got a lot of clients that really appreciate that aspect of what we can provide as a service. And we also have a fairly large and growing service desk offering. And that has a really natural pairing to ServiceNow because of the ITSM and ITIL crossover.
You mentioned two things there which stood out. One of which was the very first customer you guys worked with in ServiceNow is still a customer all these years later, which really speaks to the quality of the work that you've done. And then also the diversity of your offerings, both in private sector and public sector, which I know is challenging and requires talented individuals. So I'd love to get your take on the approach you take with your customers, why you've been able to have such sustained repeat business over so long, and then bringing it back to the team that you work with, what makes them so talented. I know you referenced there, you guys have one of the most well-regarded and award-winning trainers in the space. So if you could just elaborate on those two components, and it obviously all comes back to the great people at CAI.
That long-term client that I referred to that you just mentioned, we provide managed service style of ServiceNow consulting for them, but we also work in other areas of their company. And one of the challenges that we see most often with clients is convincing them to take the journey and to take the journey in a way that is sticking to ITIL principles and out-of-the-box capabilities as much as possible for both expediency, but also for long-term viability so that you're upgrade proof, if you will, or future proof. And so organizational change management is a big aspect of what we help with. And we find that just, listening, asking, but then listening, as opposed to asking only so that we can turn around and tell them something. So we focus on that active listening component a lot. And I think clients like this long-term client that we have appreciate that. And if things do go bump in the night, we, always answer on the first ring and work with them, as opposed to treating it like a problem that they have. We treat it like a problem that we have, and we don't stop working on it until it's resolved. So that's a big part of what we do. Another aspect that I mentioned before, that we have a service desk component that's actually bigger than the ServiceNow practice here at CAI. And when you merge those two things together and then have the top trainer in the ecosystem. And I mean, Scott Fable is the name of this trainer, and he actually teaches cohorts on behalf of ServiceNow. He's certified to teach, I think, 11 different CIS certification classes, as well as the Certified System Administrator and also PMP and ITIL 4 certifications. So in the same way that ServiceNow is a single platform where you can store data across multiple business groups within your company and have them all on one platform, so as a single platform of action or a single platform of truth, we try at CAI to be a single resource for services, for, like I said, technical and non-technical. But in the ServiceNow practice that I'm in, it's largely technical. And that extends to not just implementing, but advising, giving roadmap services and training. And I would mention that around roadmap, one of the things that we see a lot in the world and in the ServiceNow world is AI, right? Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's trying to get AI, to do it responsibly, to do it safely. And we have a whole practice around responsible AI. But we're also, a couple of our clients have taken on what they consider beta testing of the Now Assist capabilities of generative AI within the platform. And they've had some limited success early on, and they're excited to see what's coming next.
You are listening to the Alldus podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
One of the things that stands out continuously in this conversation and all of our prior conversations is the environment that's created for people to be successful. And you referenced there some of the tenure of the people that you're working with is standout. When you look at the next chapter for CAI in its journey with ServiceNow, given the growth of the ServiceNow platform, given the introduction of its Gen AI capabilities, when you look at what's possible for your team, particularly in the near term, the next 1 to 2 years, what are you excited about, and how will that then translate into the importance of keeping the talent that you have, maintaining a good team while also growing the team as the needs continue to grow with it?
Well, AI is certainly going to continue to be a part of that. It's just at the beginning. And so making sure that we're aware of that and staying abreast of the capabilities and how they can be leveraged in the platform is going to be important for us. We're also paying attention to the way that ServiceNow is expanding on the customer service aspect, as opposed to just the ITSM or the ITIL-based capabilities like incident change, problem request, and knowledge. We're really paying attention to the way they're doubling down on the customer service case management aspects. It started with just customer service case management, and then it grew into HR, and then field services became a standalone. And now they're doing public sector digital services and financial service operations. So we're really paying attention to these industry vertical overlays that they're putting into the customer service product. And we think that's a place that we can grow into in the next few years. I would say those are the top two things. And then as far as finding good talent, it's important to have a good culture. We get asked a lot about whether or not we look on a consistent basis people to keep 60 or 70-hour work weeks, and we don't. Our philosophy is to model ourselves after a 40-hour work week, and we'll work beyond that when it's absolutely necessary, but it's not part of the plan or the goal to work all of our people as much as possible. So culturally, we find people are attracted to that. So it's part of the equation of attracting good talent is to have the right culture that they want to join. But another part is making sure that you're engaged with other partners that can help do that. And Alldus is one of those. We've been working with Alldus for a few years now, sourcing quite a number of our technical consultants when we need something off the street quickly. I think right now we have 10, maybe a little bit more, actively engaged that came from Alldus. And we met with you guys in person back at Knowledge 23, and that was a great experience.
Hey, Scott, so glad you mentioned that, and we appreciate the partnership. It's been a pleasure working with you since we first engaged. And the reason why I keep coming back to CAI's investments in its people and the environment and the training, the feedback has always been CAI is an incredible place to work. The level of employee engagement and how they feel is one that really does stand out, which is why I want to give you the platform to speak on that. And I think that's a good way to segue into where we typically finish these interviews. It's always talking to an audience of potential future employees. you and I have just spent 20 minutes talking about CAI, its mission, its environment. And based on that last point there, you talked about the people side of it and how we've been partnering on it. So I want to turn that on its head. When you personally are interviewing talent, when you're speaking to people about CAI and you feel that they have the right skill set and culture fit that can add value to the team, what is it that you tell people about CAI, about the mission, about how you and your team work that gets them excited enough to join you guys over some of the other great companies also trying to hire in this space?
I think the work-life balance is pretty close to the top of questions most frequently asked and things that we find a way to work into the conversation in case they were thinking about it but not asking. I would say a close second is going back to the culture and the diversity aspects of what we strive for. We have, I don't think I mentioned it specifically, but we have right now 6 groups that we call employee resource groups, where people who are passionate about a particular social aspect of working at a company might be, if they're on the fence about multiple offers they might have, these extra socializing opportunities and awareness cultures are really important and can be a deciding factor. And so we have one called, in each employee resource group, called Converge for military veterans, one called Dimes for multicultural employees, OutTech and Allies for LGBTQ plus and colleagues, Rise for young professionals, Techability for people with disabilities or neurodivergent individuals, and WCAI for women. It's a women-focused resource group. So we're really proud to have those kind of things and to do things like summer internships. I've taken a couple of rising seniors in the summer between their junior and senior years on in the ServiceNow practice, and we train them up and get them certified as a certified system admin in the matter of 3 months of not just doing the training and getting the cert, but also doing some work on our internal instance. And we've also had really good success globally. We've taken some resources from our Manila office and some from our India office and done the same thing. Folks that were previously deployed in .NET or Java, and we've upskilled them into ServiceNow. And this was before the Rise Up program from ServiceNow, but it mirrors it nicely.
Final question for me then, Kay Scott. I know it's difficult to predict, particularly this time of year with a lot of the RFPs out in the public sector and then also the commercial side of things. But when you look at the opportunity that's in front of CAI and ServiceNow, looking at the next 12 months, if you guys can continue to be successful with implementations and bring in some more customers, where do you anticipate needing to bolster or strengthen the squad? Where do you see opportunity for people who have listened to this conversation and feel like CAI is the type of place they would want to consider for their next move to develop their own career? Where do you anticipate needing potential ServiceNow resources?
That's a great question. The elevator pitch on that would be that when I joined 6 years ago, I think we were about a $600 million revenue company. We're a $1.2 billion revenue company now. We're looking to double that in the next 2 to 3 years. And that means doubling everything that we do across our enterprise. And so ServiceNow is a contributing factor there. And in order to do our part, we need to double what we do. So we have about 50 associates today working exclusively on ServiceNow. Our goal in the next 2+ years is to go after projects and secure them so that we need twice that many, at least twice that many. So we're looking at significant growth across the company, and that includes our ServiceNow practice. So we're going to need folks that are interested in technology, that are interested in ServiceNow, and that are ready, willing, and able to become certified lead application consultants. That's an important metric that ServiceNow uses to gauge and grade their partners in the ecosystem.
Okay, Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. Been very much looking forward to this one for quite some time. It's been long overdue, and I'm delighted we finally got you on to talk about CAI and the incredible place to work. It's also great to hear about the new things coming down the pipeline in terms of new markets that you're looking at. But what's always been the standout for CAI is its treatment of its people, its investment in its talent, and probably one of the main keys to your success. So we wish you, the team, and everyone at CAI the very best of luck in the months and years ahead, and look forward to having you back on the show again in the near future. Let's not leave it this long next time around.
Thanks, JP. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.